very eventful couple of weeks in the telecom sector. We've had more rumours about MTN perhaps making an acquisition in India. We've had Vodacom's rebranding campaign. We've also had Telecoms selling its multi-links business in Nigeria. Let's start off with MTN because that was the rumour that came out this week that it may buy a stake in Idea Cellular. Is this something that you're taking seriously, that you're taking a look at?
I think they certainly are on the lookout, and it's probably also the reason they restructured end of last year organization in order to be able to facilitate M&A activity outside of South African constraints and perhaps be able to address new opportunities. And we do know that MTN is still in expansionary mode, or they haven't denied it. And India obviously represents, I think, as a domestic market, it's a very big market, India and China. And also possibly from India, there could be a springboard into other markets.
Is India a market that's attractive though to you because it is quite a competitive market, so margins are a bit lower? The tie-up with Bharti would have seen perhaps Bharti being the more dominant partner in that relationship. This is a smaller company, I think it's the third biggest. Is it something that MTN should have?
Bharti, I think Bharti's strategy was to try and get into Africa on the back of MTN. With this potential deal, it looks like MTN is trying to move more into the Asian subcontinent. It is a very competitive market. I think Idea's ARPU was around $3, so something we're starting to see in the African markets as the marginal ARPU. But it is a lower margin, EBITDA of about 28% with Idea. So it would be a lot of hard work. I think Idea has in the region of 80 million subscribers plus. Significantly smaller than Bharti in the Indian market, so probably quite a lot of work that MTN would have to realize. But having said that, with 80 million in a single market is something that a Pan-African operator looks at on a Pan-African basis across 53 markets and into the Middle East. So as a single jurisdiction, so to speak, I suppose in that sense it's attractive. You have a large base. You do have to have a large base though to realize a profit.
The talk is that it would buy 47% of Idea from Aditya Birla, which is the major shareholder in Idea. Would you be more comfortable with MTN buying a stake in a cell phone company rather than buying the cell phone company outright?
I think MTN would probably prefer to buy at least majority shares so it can possibly rebrand and be able to make all the management decisions it needs to. But I think given probably the scenario, it could be a first step. There's always possibility of expansion and acquisition of additional shares as time evolves. So it's, as a first step, possibly something that MTN is prepared to do in order to be able to get into that market.
Does it need to make an acquisition for growth at this stage? Because last year it's indicated that it would move away from big acquisitions, would rather start returning capital to shareholders. Yes. So it seemed a bit of a shift in strategy and now a shift back again.
I don't think it needs to make an acquisition, but possibly one reason to make that is if MTN may be looking at selling MTN itself at some point in time, it obviously would want to, I think, expand its own subscriber base as a group in order to become more attractive as a large operator fully across the Asian, Middle Eastern and African markets.
Vodacom, you were talking about rebranding. We've seen that rebranding campaign coming out of Vodacom. Town's been painted red. 200 million rand spent. Do you think it's been well spent?
Well, it will be interesting to see. Maybe some researchers will undertake an exercise because Cell C also spent about approximately 200 million rands on its rebranding about a year ago. It will be interesting to see which one goes further, which rebranding exercise. I think from Vodacom's perspective, it's more something that has been on the books to align the company more with Vodafone from a look and feel perspective now that it's 65% owned by Vodafone. Vodafone does normally pursue a strategy of a single brand, namely Vodafone, but perhaps Vodacom does hold some merit as a brand itself, value for subscribers in South Africa, and also it's active in 4 other African markets where it spearheads operations and also manages some of the Vodafone operations in other African markets. So perhaps that's the reason to retain the brand, that it is something people identify with. But over time, we may possibly see Vodacom being fully rebranded as Vodafone, and this is perhaps a transition step, but certainly something to, I think, at least make appearance of a greater alignment in the customer's mind with Vodafone. And you can see that as soon as you come into Johannesburg International Airport now, and Vodafone follows a similar marketing strategy with Safaricom in Kenya, for instance, where it's Vodafone and then small Safaricom brand on the side as a representative of Vodafone in the Kenyan market. There's also been speculation that perhaps Vodafone should rebrand to Vodacom, because Vodacom means affords the perception of a full suite of communication services, which is obviously what mobile operators are aiming towards, rather than Vodafone, which really speaks more towards just telephony and mostly voice services. But I think given Vodafone's equity and perception globally, it's not likely to happen that Vodacom would be the dominant brand in time.
Do you think Telkom could do with some rebranding at this stage, or do you think that it's moving in the right direction? It's got the new CEO, Pinky Moholi, now in place, and also has sold that multi-links business in Nigeria, and that's something that's been hanging over the group.
Well, it hasn't sold multi-links business. It sold the CDMA, the wireless
so the cellular
operation. It is keeping the fixed line and really has an opportunity there, I think, because that market is still quite small. Managed data network services, building onto it a larger expanded suite of IT services, and over time they will move into the so-called cloud services. But it's something Telkom is good at in South Africa, and it's trying to replicate that in the Nigerian market as well. On the CDMA side, it was a clear loser, I think, given the size of the mobile market with the large GSM operators and its small position in that market with a technology that in some people's minds may be inferior, although it's not really. Changing the brand, we have had a look at the Telkom brand and other, I think, research houses as well, consumer research houses some time ago, and the Telkom brand is still quite a strong brand, particularly when it comes to the business corporate market segment. So I don't think Telkom necessarily needs to change the brand. I think the brand is okay as it is. I think what needs to happen is Telkom really coming up with a persuasive suite of services and tackling the market, facing the competition full on, and coming up with new solutions, particularly when it comes to the business market segment, SMEs, large corporations, and also the consumer. But Telkom's forte has for a long time been in delivering business services, and obviously I think a lot of focus is still on that, and that's likely to continue into the future.